Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to True Love 40, the place where we believe that love does not come with an age limit. If you are new here, this channel is all about real, raw, and emotional love stories that will make your heart race, your eyes water, and your soul believe in love again. Every story we tell here proves one thing. True love does not care about age, size, or what the world thinks. So if you have not already, hit that subscribe button, tap that bell icon, and join our True Love family because today's story is absolutely insane. Grab your tissues, get comfortable, and let me tell you about the most embarrassing first dates you have ever heard that somehow turned into the most beautiful love story ever. This one is called, oh god, this is so embarrassing. What else can you hear? And trust me, you are not ready for this one. Let's go. Margaret Sullivan was sitting across from the most beautiful man she had ever seen in her entire 40. 2 years of life when she realized with absolute horror that he could hear everything. Not just her words, not just her nervous laughter. Everything. The whispered voice notes she was sending under the table to her best friend. The ones where she was describing exactly how his deep blue eyes made her stomach flip. The ones where she called him devastatingly gorgeous and admitted she wanted to climb him like a tree. Her Bluetooth had connected to the restaurant speaker system, and every single person in the packed Italian restaurant had heard every word. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. 47 people staring. 3 waiters frozen mid-step. 1 elderly woman clutching her pearls, and Ethan Carter, 25 years old, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, sitting directly across from her with an expression she could not read. His deep blue eyes locked onto hers, his lips twitched, and Margaret wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. Right now, immediately, no questions asked. But here is the thing about this moment. This humiliating, soul-crushing, absolutely catastrophic moment. It was not the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of something Margaret Sullivan never expected. Something that would change both their lives forever. Something that started exactly 2 hours earlier with a dare, a dating app, and a lie that spiraled completely out of control. Let me take you back to where it all started. 3 days before the restaurant incident, Margaret was sitting on her couch in her small apartment above her bakery, the Sweet Locket, wearing her favorite oversized cardigan and eating cookie dough straight from the bowl. Her wavy auburn hair was piled on top of her head in a messy bun. Her bright green eyes were fixed on her laptop screen. And her best friend Rachel was on speakerphone, being absolutely relentless. You need to get back out there, Maggie. It has been 3 years since the divorce. 3 years? That is longer than some celebrity marriages last. Margaret licked the spoon. I am perfectly happy. I have my bakery. I have my cat. I have my sourdough starter. His name is Gerald and he is very loyal. You named your sourdough starter. He has never let me down, Rachel. Rachel sighed so hard Margaret could feel it through the phone. I am signing you up for a dating app. Tonight, right now, non-negotiable. Absolutely not. I am 42 years old. I am not going on some app where men my age are looking for women half theirs. I refuse to compete with 25-year-olds who know what TikTok dances are. Just try it. 1 month. If you hate it, I will never bring it up again. You promise? I promise. Rachel was lying. Margaret knew she was lying. But she also knew Rachel would not stop until she agreed. So she agreed. And that was her first mistake. Rachel created the profile. She used the good photos. The ones from her cousin's wedding where the lighting was soft and Margaret's green eyes looked like sea glass. The ones where her fair skin glowed and her freckles looked like constellations. The ones where her full, curvy figure looked exactly like what it was, beautiful. Rachel wrote the bio. 42, baker. Lover of rainy days, old books, and bread that takes 3 days to make. Looking for someone who does not mind flour on everything. The matches started coming in immediately. Most of them were terrible. Men who opened with comments about her body. Men who clearly had not read a single word of her profile. Men whose profile pictures were taken in the front seat of their trucks with sunglasses on. Margaret was ready to delete the app within 48 hours. And then she matched with someone named E. His profile was sparse, almost mysterious. No last name. One photo that was slightly blurred showing a tall figure in a leather jacket leaning against a brick wall. Dark hair. Strong jaw. The bio said simply new in town. Architect. Looking for something real in a world full of filters. Also, I make terrible coffee, but I will try. If you are feeling this story right now, if you are already curious about what happens next, hit that like button and settle in, because this story is about to take turns you will never see coming. Margaret almost swiped past him. But something about that bio made her stop. Something real in a world full of filters. She swiped right, they matched instantly, and the messages began. They talked for hours that first night. Not surface level small talk, real conversation. He told her he had just moved to town for a big architectural project. She told him about her bakery, about how she started it from nothing after her divorce. He told her his father had passed away when he was young, and he wore his vintage watch every single day. She told him about her silver locket, how it held a tiny photo of her grandmother who taught her to bake. They talked about loneliness, about starting over, about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is try again. Margaret noticed he never asked her age. She noticed because she had not put it in the version of the profile he was seeing. Rachel had made a second version, a version that said 35 instead of 42. Margaret had not noticed at first, and by the time she did notice, she was already in too deep. The conversations were too good, the connection was too real, and she was terrified that if she told the truth, it would all disappear. That was her second mistake. They agreed to meet on Friday evening. A little Italian restaurant called Bella Notte on the corner of Main and 5th. Margaret changed her outfit 11 times. She finally settled on a flowing emerald green blouse that matched her eyes, well-fitted dark jeans, and her favorite ankle boots. She left her auburn hair down, wavy and natural, silver locket around her neck. Light makeup, a little mascara, a little lip color. She looked in the mirror and for the first time in a long time, she felt beautiful. She arrived early. She chose a table near the back. She ordered water and tried to stop her hands from shaking. And then he walked in. Ethan Carter, 6'1", athletic build, broad shoulders that filled out his fitted black t-shirt perfectly. Dark brown wavy hair that looked like he had run his fingers through it exactly once and it had fallen into place perfectly. Sharp jawline with a shadow of stubble. And those eyes. God, those eyes. Deep blue with hints of stormy gray. They scanned the restaurant and landed on her, and Margaret forgot how to breathe. He was young. He was so obviously undeniably young. Not 30. Not even close. Margaret felt her heart drop into her stomach. She had been catfished. Or she was the catfish. Or both. She was not sure anymore. All she knew was that this beautiful young man was walking toward her table with a smile that could end wars, and she was a 42-year-old woman who had lied about her age. Margaret. His voice was warm, deep but gentle. He extended his hand and she saw it. The small compass tattoo on his inner wrist, the vintage watch on the other. I am Ethan. It is so good to finally meet you. She shook his hand. His grip was firm but careful, like he was holding something precious. Ah yes, that is me. Margaret, Maggie. People call me Maggie. She was rambling. She knew she was rambling. He smiled and sat down, and she wanted to die. Now here is where this story hits its first major turning point. Remember this moment because everything changes right here. They ordered dinner. They talked. And despite her panic, despite the lie sitting in her chest like a stone, Margaret found herself relaxing. Ethan was not what she expected. He was not cocky or shallow. He was thoughtful. He asked real questions. He listened like her answers mattered. He told her about losing his father at 16. About his mother who raised him alone. About how he became an architect because his father used to draw buildings on napkins at dinner. He got quiet when he talked about the watch. His thumb traced its face unconsciously, and Margaret saw something in his stormy blue eyes that she recognized. Grief, the kind that never fully leaves. She reached across the table and touched his hand. Just briefly, just enough. He would be proud of you, Ethan. His eyes glistened. He cleared his throat. Thank you. That means more than you know. And in that moment, Margaret knew she was in trouble. Because this was not just attraction. This was connection. Real deep, terrifying connection. And it was built on a lie. Under the table, she pulled out her phone. She opened a voice note to Rachel. She whispered as quietly as she could. Rachel. Oh my God, he is here. He is the most gorgeous man I have ever seen. He has these blue eyes that change color, and this jawline, and Rachel, I think he is like 25. Maybe younger. I lied about my age and he is a BY and I am a monster and also I want to marry him. What do I do? She sent it. She put her phone down. She smiled at Ethan, who was looking at the dessert menu. Everything was fine. Everything was not fine. What Margaret did not know was that when she walked into the restaurant, her phone had automatically connected to the Bluetooth speaker system. The same system that played soft Italian music throughout the dining room. The same system that was now broadcasting her voice note at full volume to every single person in Bella Notte. Her voice filled the restaurant like a confession at Sunday Mass. Every word, every panicked syllable, the part about his eyes, the part about wanting to marry him, the part about being a monster. All of it. If this moment just made your jaw drop, drop a comment below telling me what you would do in this situation. Would you run? Would you hide? Would you stay? Tell me, because I genuinely want to know. The silence after the voice note ended lasted approximately 4 seconds. It felt like 4 centuries. Margaret sat frozen. Her face went from fair to crimson in the time it takes a heart to beat. Every freckle on her nose seemed to darken against the violent blush. Her green eyes were wide with pure, undiluted horror. Ethan stared at her. The entire restaurant stared at her. The elderly woman 3 tables over lowered her glasses to get a better look. A waiter dropped a breadstick. Margaret did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed her purse and ran. She made it exactly 14 steps out the restaurant door before she heard footsteps behind her. Fast footsteps. Long strides. Ethan caught up to her on the sidewalk under the amber glow of a street lamp. The evening air was cool against her burning face. She could not look at him. She physically could not make her eyes meet his. Maggie, wait, please do not. I am so sorry. I am so embarrassed. I have to go. I have to move to another country. I am thinking Sweden. They have good bread there. Maggie. Or maybe a remote island. Do they have bakeries on remote islands? I could start one. I could live with coconuts. Maggie. He said it a third time, and this time his hand caught her elbow. Gently. So gently. She stopped walking, but she still could not look up. She stared at his boots. Nice boots, black leather. Of course, even his boots were perfect. You think my eyes change color? Her head snapped up. He was smiling. Not mocking, not cruel. Genuinely smiling, that warm, slightly crooked smile that made one side of his mouth lift higher than the other. That is what you took from that, she whispered. I also caught the part about wanting to marry me. That was a nice touch. I want to die. Please do not. I just got here and you are the most interesting person I have met in this entire town. She stared at him. He stared at her. The street lamp hummed above them. A car passed slowly on the road behind them, and then Margaret did something she did not plan. She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that starts deep in your belly and shakes your whole body, the kind that makes your eyes crinkle at the corners and tears leak out. She laughed until she was bent over on the sidewalk, and Ethan was laughing too, his deep laugh mixing with hers in the cool night air. When they finally stopped, they were both breathless. Margaret wiped her eyes. Ethan was leaning against the street lamp, arms crossed over his broad chest, looking at her with an expression that made her heart do something dangerous. There is something I need to tell you, she said. The laughter faded. Reality crept back in like cold water. I lied about my age on the app. I am not 35. I am 42. She watched his face carefully, watched for the flinch, the polite retreat, the "oh, that is okay, but suddenly I have to go" expression she had seen on other faces before. The expression that meant she was too old, too much, too different from what they expected. It did not come. Ethan tilted his head slightly. His blue eyes caught the lamplight and turned almost silver. I know, he said. Margaret blinked. What? I figured it out on day 2 of our conversations. You referenced a TV show that ended in 2003 and said you watched the finale in college. The math did not add up for 35. You knew this whole time? I knew. And I am still here? But you are 25. I am aware of my own age, yes. Ethan, that is 17 years. I can also do math, Maggie. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Why did you not say anything? He stepped closer. 1 step. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. something warm and woody. Close enough that she had to tilt her head up to meet his eyes. Because age is not why I am here. I am here because you told me about your grandmother's bread recipe and cried. I am here because you asked about my father's watch and actually cared about the answer. I am here because in 3 days of talking to you, I felt more seen than I have felt in years. Margaret felt her eyes burn. She blinked rapidly. She was not going to cry on a sidewalk outside an Italian restaurant where she had just publicly humiliated herself. She was not. She cried, just a little, just enough that one tear slid down her freckled cheek and Ethan reached out and caught it with his thumb. His hand was warm against her face, large and careful and impossibly gentle. For the record, he said quietly, I also think you are devastatingly gorgeous. So we are even, and that right there is where this story takes its second massive turn. Because what happened next changed everything. They went back inside, together. The entire restaurant watched them walk back to their table. Margaret kept her eyes forward. Ethan pulled out her chair. The elderly woman with the pearls gave a small approving nod. The waiter brought fresh breadsticks and very deliberately disconnected the Bluetooth system. They had dessert. Tiramisu. They shared it. 2 forks. And they talked about the elephant in the room. The age gap. The fact that people would stare, would judge, would whisper. My mother will love you, Ethan said casually, twirling his fork. You cannot introduce me to your mother. She is probably my age. She is 45, 3 years older than you. She will absolutely love you. Margaret put her face in her hands. This is insane, maybe. But insane is not the same as wrong. He walked her home that night, all the way to the door of her bakery. The sweet locket, he looked up at the hand-painted sign and smiled. You built this yourself? From nothing. After the divorce, it was the hardest and best thing I ever did. Can I see it? She unlocked the door. The bakery was dark and warm and smelled like vanilla and yeast and home. She turned on the small lights behind the counter. The glass cases were empty, waiting for the morning's fresh pastries. The walls were exposed brick with vintage baking prints. A chalkboard menu in her handwriting. Everything she had built. Everything she was. Ethan walked through the small space slowly, touching the counter, looking at the photos on the wall. Margaret at her first farmer's market. Margaret covered in flour laughing. Margaret holding the keys on opening day. You are remarkable, he said, not to her, almost to himself. Like it was an observation he could not keep inside. Margaret leaned against the counter and looked at this impossible young man standing in her bakery and felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that had been sealed shut since her divorce. Since her ex-husband told her she was too old, too heavy, too boring, too much and not enough at the same time. Something that had convinced her the best parts of her life were behind her. Ethan, I need you to understand something. I am not the kind of woman men like you pursue. I am 42. I am not thin. I have stretch marks and laugh lines and I go to bed at 9:30. My idea of excitement is a new bread recipe. You are 25 and gorgeous and you could be with anyone. I do not want anyone. You do not even know me. Then let me know you, Maggie. The third turn is coming. And I promise you, you are not ready for it. They started seeing each other. Quietly at first. Coffee in the morning before the bakery opened. Walks in the evening when the town settled down. He brought her architecture sketches, and she brought him fresh croissants. He fixed the broken shelf in her kitchen, and she taught him how to knead dough. His hands were too strong at first. He pressed too hard. She covered his flour, dusted fingers with hers, and showed him the rhythm. Gentle, patient, like a heartbeat. The town noticed. Of course the town noticed. A small town always notices. The whispers started within a week. Did you see them together? He is half her age. She should know better. He is practically a child. What could he possibly see in her? The whispers reached Margaret through her customers, through sideways glances, through the sudden silence that fell when she walked into the grocery store, and they reached her through one person in particular, David Mercer. David was Margaret's ex-husband, 46, successful real estate developer, remarried to a 28-year-old named Brittany. He had left Margaret 3 years ago saying he needed someone who still had life in them. The irony of him now standing in her bakery doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight, Telling her that her relationship with Ethan was inappropriate was not lost on her. People are talking, Margaret. People always talk, David. You taught me that. He is a kid. He is 25. A licensed architect. Hardly a kid. David stepped closer. His voice dropped. I am trying to protect you. This is embarrassing. Margaret felt the old shame rise up. The familiar heat behind her eyes. The urge to shrink. To fold herself smaller. To agree that yes, she was being ridiculous. Yes, she should know her place. Yes, she was too much and not enough. But then she looked past David and saw Ethan crossing the street toward the bakery. Leather jacket. Messy hair. Blue eyes focused on the doorway. On her. He saw David and his stride changed. Not aggressive, protective. His jaw tightened slightly. His broad shoulders squared. Everything okay? Ethan asked from the doorway. His voice was calm, but his eyes were steel. David turned, looked Ethan up and down. The age difference was visible, undeniable. David almost laughed. You must be the boyfriend, and you must be the ex-husband who left the most incredible woman I have ever met because you were too small to appreciate her. Ethan did not raise his voice, did not clench his fists, just stated it like a fact. Like gravity, like sunrise. David left. He left without another word. Margaret stood behind her counter, hands dusted with flour, heart pounding, eyes burning. Ethan walked over and stood on the other side of the counter and just looked at her. You did not have to do that, she whispered. Yeah, I did. She reached across the counter and grabbed the front of his leather jacket and pulled him toward her and kissed him. Right there in her bakery, flower handprints on black leather. Tears on her cheeks, his hands in her auburn hair, the silver locket pressed between them. It was messy and imperfect, and it tasted like salted caramel, and it was the best kiss of her entire life. If this story is making you feel something right now, if your heart is beating a little faster, share this with someone who needs to hear that love has no expiration date. And subscribe to this channel because stories like this are what we live for here at True Love 40. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's architectural project was a community center for the town. He threw himself into it. Margaret watched him work, watched him sketch at her bakery table in the early morning light, his dark hair falling across his forehead, his blue eyes intense with focus, his father's watch glinting on his wrist. She brought him coffee. He brought her wildflowers. They fell into a rhythm that felt like it had always existed. But the conflict was not over. The town's judgment intensified. Someone left an anonymous note on the bakery door. Cougar written in red marker. Margaret found it before Ethan did. She threw it away with shaking hands. But it left a mark, an invisible one that sat on her chest like a weight. Then Ethan's mother came to visit. Sarah Carter, 40, 5 years old. Kind face, sharp eyes. The same stormy blue as her son's. She walked into the bakery and looked at Margaret, and Margaret felt herself being measured. Weighed. Assessed by the one person whose opinion could end everything. Sarah ordered a coffee and a scone. She sat at the corner table. She watched Margaret work for 20 minutes without saying a word. Finally, when the morning rush ended, she spoke. Sit with me. Margaret sat. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap her knuckles were white. You are older than me, Sarah said, not cruel, just factual, by 3 years. Yes! He talks about you constantly. Every phone call. Maggie this. Maggie that. Maggie makes this bread that could make you cry. Margaret almost smiled. Almost. Sarah leaned forward. My husband died when Ethan was 16. I raised that boy alone. He is everything I have. And he has spent the last 9 years keeping people at arm's length because losing his father broke something in him. He does not let people in. Margaret nodded. She knew this. She had felt the walls Ethan kept. The way he deflected with humor. The way he changed the subject when things got too real. Until her? Until somehow, impossibly, her. He let you in? Sarah said. Her voice cracked slightly. In 25 years, I have never seen him let someone in the way he has let you in. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Sarah reached across the table and took Margaret's flour-dusted hand. I do not care about your age. I do not care what this town says. I care that my son smiles again. Real smiles. The kind his father used to have. Margaret broke. Right there in her bakery. She broke open like bread from the oven, warm and soft and real. She cried and Sarah held her hand, and outside the window Ethan was crossing the street with wildflowers again, completely unaware that inside, two women who loved him had just found each other. The community center opened on a Saturday in October. The whole town came. Ethan stood at the front in a navy blazer, his dark hair actually combed for once, his father's watch polished and gleaming. He gave a speech about building things that last, about foundations and structures, and how the strongest buildings are the ones designed to weather storms. He looked at Margaret when he said that. She was standing in the back in a flowing autumn orange dress, her auburn hair catching the October light, her green eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. He looked at her, and every person in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. David was there, with Brittany. He watched the whole thing with a tight jaw and hollow eyes. And for the first time, Margaret did not feel shame when she saw him. She felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just nothing, because the space he used to occupy in her heart had been filled with something so much bigger. After the ceremony, Ethan found her outside. The autumn air was crisp. Leaves were falling in slow spirals around them. He took her hands. "I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered. "Okay." "The project is done. My firm wants me back in the city." The world tilted. Margaret felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Of course this was temporary. She was foolish to think otherwise. A young architect and a small-town baker. A fairy tale with an expiration date. "When do you leave?" Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "They want me back Monday." 3 days, she had 3 days. "Okay." She smiled. It was the hardest smile of her life. "Okay, we knew this was not forever." "No, it is fine. Really. I am grateful for every moment." "Maggie, stop." He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. Architectural paper, the kind he used for his sketches. He unfolded it carefully and held it up. It was a drawing, a building, a bakery, but bigger, with a second floor, with large windows and a wraparound porch and climbing roses on a stone wall. And above the door, hand, lettered in his precise architectural handwriting, it said the sweet locket. "I am not going back to the city," he said. "I called my firm this morning and told them I am starting my own practice. Here, in this town." Margaret stared at the drawing. Her hands were shaking. "I am going to build you this bakery, Maggie. And I am going to build my life here, next to yours, if you will let me." She looked up at him. This 25-year-old man with his father's watch and his compass tattoo pointing toward something he had finally found. This man who walked into her restaurant and heard her most embarrassing moment and stayed, who faced her ex-husband without flinching, who let her teach him to knead dough with flour-covered fingers, who looked at her, all of her, every curve, every freckle, every laugh line, every year, and saw someone worth staying for. "You are insane," she whispered. "Maybe, but insane is not the same as wrong." She grabbed his jacket again, pulled him in, kissed him under the falling October leaves while the whole town watched, and for once the whispers did not matter. Not a single one. 6 months later, the new bakery opened. It was exactly like the drawing. Large windows that flooded the space with morning light. A wraparound porch where customers sat with coffee and watched the town wake up. Climbing roses on the stone wall that Ethan built with his own hands. And above the door, hand-lettered in his precise architectural handwriting, the sweet locket. On opening day, Margaret stood behind the new counter in her flour-dusted apron, her auburn hair swept up, her green eyes glowing, her silver locket catching the light. Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his father's watch on his wrist, his compass tattoo pointing home. The elderly woman from the Italian restaurant was their first customer. She ordered a scone and a coffee, and she looked at them both and she said, "I knew it that first night, when he chased you out of that restaurant. That is what love looks like. It chases you. It does not care about numbers." Margaret smiled, the kind that crinkles her eyes at the corners, the kind that makes everyone around her feel warm. And somewhere in the back of the bakery, her phone sat on a shelf, Bluetooth permanently disabled, because some lessons you only need to learn once. Here is what this story taught me. Love does not check your ID. It does not care about the number on your birthday cake or the size of your jeans or what the town whispers behind your back. Love walks into a restaurant and hears your most embarrassing moment and stays. Love stands up to your past. Love builds you a bakery with its own 2 hands. If you are sitting there thinking your best days are behind you, they are not. If you are thinking you are too old, too much, not enough, you are wrong. Your person is out there, and they are not going to care about a single thing you are insecure about. They are going to look at you the way Ethan looked at Maggie, like you are the blueprint for everything they have been trying to build. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in love again even for a second, like this video. Subscribe to True Love 40 because we tell stories like this every week. Stories about real love, messy love, love that does not follow the rules. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And leave a comment telling me, do you believe age is just a number? I will be reading every single one. Until next time, keep believing, keep loving, keep being beautifully, perfectly, impossibly you.